Good morning, YouTube. It's Beck here from Sewbecurated. I wanted to show you what I'm up to with hand quilting my Goling quilt. I shared a picture of it on Instagram and lots of people were like, oh, your stitches are so perfect. I always try for a really neat result when I'm quilting. It's quite a different process to the slow stitching for me, where I'm kind of aiming for a more naive look. When I'm hand quilting, I am always trying to get my best result. But there's a couple of little cheats that I'll show you that help you do that. So, if you don't know, this is my Goling quilt. It was designed by a beautiful woman called Sue Garrett, and I wrote the pattern for it. She showed it to me, asked if I would be interested. I said no, but I could help her like find something or somebody. Then I saw it and I loved it, and I'm really glad I did write it, but it has pushed my own quilt writing to the background, and that is not great. And now I've got the shop and all those things, so my own quilt, maybe it'll come out a year later than I intended, I'm not sure. I hate writing quilt patterns. I love people making them. I hate writing quilt patterns. That's an aside. So I have decided to quilt mine with black pearl 8 thread. When I'm using black, I use DMC. I like it more than Wonderfil for black. I'm not quite sure why. I often use Wonderfil pearl 8 threads to quilt or to stitch with, and I really enjoy Sue Spargo's Eleganza pearl 8 that come on a spool rather than a ball. But the black DMC and black DMC Ecru are my go-to fave hand quilting threads. So, one, I haven't decided how I'm going to do my star points yet because I want to emphasize the stars in my quilt. But you can see it does look quite neat on the front. I eyeball, but I've got a lot of experience in quilting. I've done it a lot. Most of my quilts are hand quilted. I've got a really busy background. This is part of, I unpicked an eider down, so you can still see in here like it's been washed and everything, but some indents from that original quilting that was on the eider down. Now, with such a busy background, you can hardly see the black stitching coming through. It is not going to be a feature of my backing whatsoever. And I knew that when I was choosing my black thread. And I quite like that because there are some areas of this quilt which are quite thick. For instance, this here, this little diamond shape, the seam allowance is as heavily quilted as the front of it. So getting a neat stitch through there is almost impossible, and certainly on the back it would have been impossible. And so I don't mind if my stitches, like the purpose of quilting is always to hold your layers together, so your front, your batting and your backing, you want to be less than a hand width apart, but I don't mind if it doesn't come through on every stitch there, because the busyness of the backing will distract from that. So it's kind of a cheat. If you're really particular, I was going to say quilt police, but like maybe just really particular, this isn't a solution for you. But for me, it absolutely is. I love hand quilting because it makes a soft quilt, and I love the look of it. So it's soft because you've got one thread going from the front to the back of the quilt rather than two threads locking in the middle, which is what happens when it's machine quilted. And I love the vintage look of it. And this is a really vintage inspired quilt. So like with lots of beautiful vintage fabrics and doilies, and you know, look at that. Is that not divine? But so I let that go, that imperfection of it, for like, it's imperfectly perfect to me. It doesn't matter at all. It doesn't affect my enjoyment of my project or the quilt or the look of it. And the front of it is always very nice. It's doing its job of holding all the layers together, and the busyness of the background will hide those imperfections where I cannot get the needle through all those layers with extra embroidery and back up at that kind of small kind of distance. Now, in the past, hand quilting was done, hold on 2 seconds. In the past, hand quilting was done with a finer thread, a finer needle, and it was kind of like 9 stitches per inch. And if you're working with metric, the inches is going to drive you crazy, but that's how quilters work. Was considered very fine hand quilting. Now, I'm a big stitch quilter. Like, I'm using a pearl thread. I want bang for my buck. I'm getting about 5 stitches per inch, 4 to 5. So that would be like kind of quite naive hand quilting back in the day. Compared to lots of people I see now, it's quite a small hand quilt for a pearl thread. So I'm looking for a small stitch with nice look. And I think, oh, that's upside down, but you know, that's what's achieved. And then the back is quite lovely. You can, got another quilt here. This is the Smitten quilt. It's designed by Lulu Well. I made mine ages ago and haven't finished it. So I made mine out of Liberty and a couple of others, like a gingham, just for some contrast, and that pin dot for some contrast as well. But everything else in there is Liberty. So it's not a quilt, it's a coverlet. So it doesn't have any batting in the middle. It's got a linen backing, Liberty front, pieced front. And I have been quilting it very slowly with black pearl cotton, same one, D&C. So you can see here how beautiful that pattern comes through, because I'm not trying to get through multiple layers. So I am looking for a really nice result front and back. But I'm just going to show you, like here, see how there's like, looks like a stitch is missing? It is probably because that's where I've tied off or started or finished, or, you know, so it doesn't come through. And that will happen every so often. There's one there. Stand back from it. Looks great. Look at it really up close. You start to notice those imperfections. I don't mind them. You might. So that's what a plain backing will look like. So if I'd been using like this beautiful linen on my Goling quilt, you would have seen all those imperfections showing up, especially where I couldn't get through the layers at the size of the stitch I was wanting to do in some bits. And, you know, that thick doily that I showed you that was folded over, so I was going through a double layer of that plus cotton batting plus the backing. It was very close to another line of stitching anyway, so it's for decoration, but it's not going to affect the functionality of my quilt. Now, while I'm here, I just wanted to show you a couple of other little things, and then I'm going to come back in a couple of days and show you where I'm up to with my winter whips. And so we're 2 months into winter. I did a little video at the start of winter about what I was planning on working on over winter. I've made some good progress, and you can see I'm onto quilting my Goling quilt, which is great. But I just wanted to show you a couple of very special finds that I have found lately. So the first one is this very fine embroidery I bought from England. What it's on is broken. I'm actually going to give this a warm bath and try and get some of the, you know, age dirt out of it. And then I think I'm going to cut it really finely and attach it to something. It's incredibly fine work. It's really pretty. I think once it's cleaned up, it will be the colours will be a little bit more kind of, they'll pop a little bit more or show you more variation, I guess. So that's something I bought, which I just love. On Saturday when I was in the shop, there's a new vintage shop. It's a couple of doors down, and lovely lady. There's a couple of vintage shops around me, which is great, except we're moving soon, so, well, hopefully. So we're moving away from those. But there's a new one. And she had this beautiful piece of embroidery. It was really reasonably priced. It's for me. So ironically, I'm kind of really scared of birds, but a bird in a stitching I love, and I've never seen one quite like that. It's quite big, as you can see, like, and I picked that up for myself. Oh. And then I also found, so I'm a sucker for little drawers and like sewing ones. How cute are they? So they might go in the shop for display there for me. Not want to close, or in my sewing area somewhere once we get rid of all the extra stuff for the shop. But I just thought they were divine. And then last thing while I'm here that I just wanted to share. In my last video, at the start of it, I was showing you how I clean linens. So this is that, I'm not sure if it's a hanky or a napkin. It's really fine. It's probably slightly bigger than a hanky size, but I would say slightly smaller than most napkins. It's got this lovely little cross-stitch house and trees on it, and it was quite dirty. So that is the power of soaking in nappy sand oxy action. Then I do a gentle hand wash just with Omo Sensitive, because that's what our family uses for our washing detergent. And then it's had a day in the sunlight. So look how well that comes up. There is, if it's got rust on it, that might not come off, but that was just like age kind of wear and dirt, and look how pretty it is. So that's where we're up to this fine Monday morning. I'm about to go to Pilates in my new fitness regime, which is so not a regime. And then I'm hoping to get some stitching in today. I hope you're getting lots of stitching time. See you.